In the heart of a quaint town, nestled among rolling hills and meandering streams, I grew up in a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of city life. Our small, weathered house, with its creaking wooden floors and windows offering views of sprawling fields, was a universe in itself. It was here, amidst the simplicity and warmth of family love, that my story began. My parents, though not affluent, were rich in kindness and wisdom. My father, a local carpenter, had hands that were roughened by years of labor, but gentle in touch, crafting not just furniture, but also instilling in me the values of hard work and humility. My mother, a schoolteacher, filled our home with books and stories, weaving tales that sparked my imagination and nurtured my dreams. Life in our small town was unhurried and unpretentious. Neighbors greeted each other with familiarity, and community events were the highlights of our social calendar. I cherished this life, finding joy in the small pleasures, the fresh scent of earth after rain, the rustling of leaves underfoot, and the chorus of birds at dawn. It was at the local library where I first encountered Mark. He was unlike anyone I had known, a visitor from the city, with an air of sophistication yet an unassuming nature. His family was well known in the business circles, their wealth and influence reaching far beyond the city's skyscrapers. But Mark, with his easy smile and genuine interest in my mundane tales, was a refreshing anomaly in that world. Our initial conversations were tentative, like two worlds cautiously orbiting each other. He spoke of city life, the fast pace, the endless opportunities, and the dazzling lights. I shared stories of my town, the annual harvest festival, the serene walks by the stream, and the close-knit community. In those early days, we would often meet at the old park bench by the lake, our conversations stretching for hours. The lake, with its placid waters reflecting the changing hues of the sky, bore witness to our growing connection, an invisible thread weaving our disparate worlds into one. "Anna," Mark said to me one evening, his voice tinged with a vulnerability I had not seen before. "I have always been surrounded by people who care more about wealth and status. But with you, I found a serenity that I didn't know existed. You've shown me a different way of life, one that's genuine and full of warmth." His words stirred something deep within me. "Mark, where we come from doesn't define us. It's who we are when we're together that matters. You've brought a new perspective into my life, opening my eyes to dreams I never dared to have." As our relationship deepened, Mark confided in me about his family, particularly his mother, a woman of elegance but stringent expectations. He spoke of her with respect, yet there was an underlying concern in his words. "She has her own ideas about who I should be with. I'm just worried about how she'll react to, well, to us." I reached out, taking his hand in mine, feeling the slight tremor. "We'll face that together," I assured him. "Love isn't about backgrounds or expectations. It's about two people who choose each other against all odds." The day Mark proposed was as unassuming as our love. No grand gestures, just a heartfelt promise of a life together. As I looked into his eyes, brimming with hope and love, I knew this was just the beginning. The evening I was set to meet Mark's family, my nerves were on edge. The grandeur of their mansion loomed large as we approached, a stark reminder of the different worlds Mark and I came from. Mark held my hand, giving me a reassuring look. "Just be yourself, Anna. That's all you need to be." I smiled weakly, trying to quell the rising anxiety. "I just hope your mom doesn't think I'm out of place." Mark sighed, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Mom can be a bit much. Just remember, I'm here with you." As we entered the opulent dining room, Mark's mother, Marion, a statuesque woman with an air of austerity, greeted us. Her eyes quickly took me in, a flicker of disapproval passing over her face. "So, this is the young lady who's captured my son's heart. Interesting choice, Mark." Dinner was an elaborate affair, the table set with dishes I couldn't even name. Mark's mother, ever the gracious host, offered me a plate with a sly smile. "I suppose these dishes might be a bit too sophisticated for your taste, Anna. We can get something simpler if you'd prefer." I felt a flush of embarrassment, but managed a polite decline. "No, thank you. I'm always eager to try new things." As the evening progressed, Her comments grew more pointed. She eyed my dress, a simple but neat outfit I had thought was appropriate. "Is that what passes for evening wear in your town? It must be challenging to find good clothes on a modest budget." Mark jumped in, trying to steer the conversation elsewhere, but his mother was unrelenting. "Tell me, Anna, what do your parents do? It's always fascinating to learn about different walks of life." I answered, feeling the weight of her judgment. "My father is a carpenter, and my mother is a schoolteacher." "Oh, how quaint," she replied, her voice dripping with condescendence. "Hardworking people, I'm sure, but I suppose they couldn't offer you much in the way of a financial head start." The meal continued with her taking jabs at my small-town upbringing, my parents' humble occupations, and even my salary, which she had somehow learned about. Each comment was veiled in politeness, but sharp enough to cut. Mark was visibly uncomfortable, his attempts at defending me only seeming to amuse her more. As we left, Mark's father, Daniel, pulled me aside, offering a kind smile. "Anna, you handled yourself well. Don't let her get to you. She'll come around." In the car, Mark apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry, Anna. I didn't think she'd be this harsh." I sighed, a mix of hurt and determination in my voice. "It's okay, Mark. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I love you, and that's what matters." That night, as I lay in bed, the sting of his mother's words lingered. But beneath the hurt, a resolve was building. This was more than just about fitting in. It was a test of our love and my strength, and I was ready to face it head-on. As the wedding day approached, the air was thick with excitement and, unfortunately, growing tension. Marion, who had taken it upon herself to oversee the preparations, seemed to find a peculiar pleasure in belittling my ideas and choices at every turn. One afternoon, while discussing the wedding plans with Mark and his mother, the topic of the wedding dress came up. I had chosen a simple yet elegant gown that I felt reflected my personality. Mark's mother, however, had other ideas. "That dress, Anna? It's so plain. Don't you want to make a statement on your big day? After all, you're marrying into the family," she said, her voice laced with a patronizing tone. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, giving me a supportive look. "Mom, Anna looks beautiful in that dress. It's her choice, and it's perfect." But his mother was relentless. "Oh, Mark, let's be realistic. This is a high-profile event. People expect a certain standard. Anna, dear, you should consider something more fitting of our family's status." I tried to keep my voice steady, though I felt a sting at her words. "I appreciate your concern, but I really love my dress. It's special to me." Her response was a dismissive wave. "Well, it's your day, I suppose. But remember, it's not just about you. It's about how you represent us, too." As the days went by, her comments became more frequent and cutting. Marion criticized the flower arrangements, the menu choices, even the invitations. Each remark was a subtle dig at my background and my inability to meet her lofty standards. Mark and I had many conversations about this, often late into the night. "I can't believe she's being so difficult," Mark would say, frustration evident in his voice. "I wish she could just see how amazing you are, how you make me happy." I would lie there, feeling his arms around me, a mix of love and sorrow in my heart. I knew it wouldn't be easy, marrying into your family, but I didn't expect it to be this hard. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within me. My parents and I had worked hard to make everything perfect, despite the constant criticisms from Marion. As I dressed in my simple but elegant gown, I hoped the day would pass without incident. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with love and heartfelt vows. Mark's eyes shone with affection and promise as we said our I do's. However, looming over the joyous occasion was the apprehension of the reception to follow, particularly the speeches. As expected, Marion took the microphone, her presence commanding the room's attention. The air was thick with expectation as she began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," she started, her voice loud and clear, "today we have gathered to witness the union of my son Mark with Anna, let's say, a person from a different circle." Whispers spread through the guests. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. She continued, her words sharp and unyielding. While some may commend Mark for his charitable heart in lifting a beggar from the streets, we must be cautious. It's essential to keep our family's reputation and standards high, not let them be diluted by those who are clearly freeloaders, seeking to elevate their status by clinging to a family of higher standing. The room fell into a stunned silence. My parents looked at me, their faces a mix of shock and hurt. Mark's face was a mask of disbelief and anger. The guests, a mix of our friends and Mark's high society acquaintances, looked on uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. My heart sank, and a profound shame washed over me. Her words, so cruel in public, were more than just insults. They were a deliberate attempt to shame and belittle me in front of everyone we cared about. As she concluded her speech with a forced toast to our future, the applause was hesitant and muted. The room was enveloped in an awkward silence, the joy of the occasion marred by her venomous words. Mark stood up, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, Anna. This isn't what I wanted." His eyes were apologetic, filled with a mix of love and sorrow. I looked around at the shocked faces of our guests, feeling incredibly humiliated. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, casting a shadow over what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. The atmosphere at the reception was still tense following the disparaging speech by Mark's mother, when his grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor, a figure of respect and authority in the family, requested the microphone. Her poised demeanor and serious expression immediately drew the attention of all the guests. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and firm. "I have something important to say. Anna, you have faced unwarranted criticism today, criticism that no one deserves, especially not on their wedding day." I looked up in surprise, and Mark, beside me, appeared equally astonished. Mrs. Eleanor then turned towards Marian. "It seems we have forgotten our own past and where we come from. Let me remind everyone here, especially you, that before you were the lady of this house, you were a maid working under this very roof. It was here that you met your husband." A hush fell over the room. Mark's mother's face turned a shade paler, her eyes widening in shock and embarrassment. Mrs. Eleanor continued, her tone unyielding. "So, for a former maid to stand here and scorn someone for their humble beginnings and modest means is not only ironic, but deeply hypocritical." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The room was engulfed in a stunned silence, every guest hanging on to Mrs. Eleanor's every word. You, who rose from poverty, should be the last person to judge or belittle another based on their background. We should be proud of Anna's integrity and strength, not deride her for it. The guests shifted uncomfortably, and whispers began to circulate. Marian sat motionless, the impact of Mrs. Eleanor's words evident on her face. In this family, we value character over wealth, kindness over status. Anna exemplifies these values, and I am proud to welcome her into our family, Mrs. Eleanor concluded, her gaze softening as she looked at me. The room erupted into applause, a stark contrast to the earlier muted response. Marian sat there, completely humbled, her earlier arrogance replaced by a visible sense of shame. To be honest, I didn't feel sorry for her. Mark whispered to me, "I never expected Grandma to stand up for us like this." I squeezed his hand, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. "She's amazing." The rest of the evening felt lighter, the air cleared by Mrs. Eleanor's candid defense. Guests approached with warm congratulations and sincere smiles. I felt that they were all on my side. It felt damn good. As we left the reception, hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of confidence and belonging. Mrs. Eleanor's words had shifted the dynamics, breaking the insidious plan of a cruel and not the smartest woman. The days after the wedding were heavy with an unspoken tension that hung over Mark's family like a dense fog. It all came to a head during a family meeting at Mrs. Eleanor's house, where the air was thick with expectation and apprehension. As we gathered in the grand living room, Mrs. Eleanor began without preamble, her voice firm and unwavering. "What happened at the wedding cannot be overlooked. The way you spoke to Anna, it was disgraceful." She addressed Marian directly, her eyes sharp. Mark's mother, usually so composed, looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence diminished. "Eleanor, "I've already apologized to Anna," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of defiance. "It's not just about an apology," Mrs. Eleanor retorted. "Your actions reflect on this entire family. You've become accustomed to a lifestyle funded by the family's money without appreciating its value." Mark's father nodded in agreement, his expression serious. "My mother is right. You've lost sight of what's important." Mrs. Eleanor then laid out her decision, each word deliberate and clear. "I've decided to cut off the financial support you've been receiving. It's time you start contributing to this family instead of just taking. You'll need to find a job and learn to live within your means." The shock on Marion's face was evident. She turned to her husband, seeking support. "You can't agree with this? She can't just cut me off like this." But Daniel surprised her. "I stand with my mother on this. You've gone too far this time. It's for your own good." Marion's eyes filled with anger and disbelief, her usual poise crumbling under the weight of her new reality. Mark, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice steady. "Mom, Grandma's decision is harsh, but it's fair. You need to understand the impact of your words and actions." I sat there, watching the scene unfold, feeling a mix of sympathy and relief. Mark squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. The meeting ended with Mark's mother in a state of shock, the reality of her situation slowly sinking in. She was obviously used to living at the expense of her family, and all thoughts of work caused her a migraine. I could barely contain a chuckle. As we left, Mark leaned in close. "I never thought I'd see the day when Mom would be at a loss for words, but maybe this is what she needs to change." I nodded, feeling a cautious hope for the future. Perhaps this will be a new beginning for her, for all of us. The family reckoning had been tough but necessary. It was a pivotal moment that promised to reshape the dynamics within Mark's family, hopefully for the better. The honeymoon was a welcome escape for Mark and me. As we walked along the sandy beaches, the soothing sound of the waves provided a much-needed respite from the recent family turmoil. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Mark wrapped his arm around me. "I'm sorry our wedding turned into such a drama, Anna. I wish things had been different." I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "It's okay, Mark. It wasn't your fault. What matters is we're together now, away from all that stress." Mark sighed, looking out over the ocean. "Yeah, but when we go back, we'll have to face the reality of my mom's situation. It's going to be tough for her." I nodded, understanding his concern. Maybe this will be a chance for her to grow, to see things from a different perspective. We spent our days exploring and our nights talking about our future. The challenges we had faced seemed to strengthen our bond, reaffirming our love to each other. On our last night, as we packed our bags, Mark looked thoughtful. "You know, Anna, everything that happened, it made me realize how important you are to me. I can't imagine going through life with anyone else." I smiled, touched by his words. "I feel the same, Mark. We've been through a lot, but it's only made our relationship stronger. We can handle whatever comes our way, as long as we're together." As we headed back home, I felt a sense of peace. The honeymoon had not only been a break from the chaos, but a time for us to solidify our bond, to prepare ourselves for the new chapter in our lives. We were returning to a changed reality, but we were doing it together, stronger and more united than ever. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it with Mark by my side. Coming back from our honeymoon, Mark and I were unsure of what awaited us at his family home. The car ride was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts about the new family dynamics. As we arrived, the first thing we noticed was the absence of Mark's mother. Inside, we were greeted by his grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor, who wore a knowing smile. "Welcome back, you two. I suppose you're wondering about the changes here," she said, her tone light but with an undercurrent of seriousness. "Yes, where's Mom?" Mark asked, looking around. Mrs. Eleanor took a deep breath, her smile still in place. "Well, after you left, Marion caused quite a scene. Demanded that I restore her financial support. When I refused, she decided to leave. She's now living in a small apartment and, from what I hear, is looking for a job." Mark and I exchanged glances, the news sinking in. It was a drastic change from the luxurious life she was used to. "And there's more," Mrs. Eleanor continued, leaning in as if to share a secret. Your father is considering a divorce. He's had enough of her antics. Seems like she finally pushed him too far. Well, she brought it upon herself." Mark's expression was one of shock mixed with a hint of relief. "I can't believe it. I mean, I knew things would change, but this is more than I expected." I reached out, touching his arm. "It's a lot to take in, but maybe this is for the best. A chance for everyone to start fresh, on a more honest footing." Dinner that night was an oddly serene affair. The absence of Mark's mother felt, but not in the way we had anticipated. The conversation was more open, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like there was a real sense of family. As we drove home later that evening, Mark was pensive. "I always hoped for a change, but I didn't expect it to happen like this. It's going to be a big adjustment for Mom." I nodded. "It's a tough situation, but maybe it's a necessary step for her to grow, and for your dad too, to find some peace." The ride home was reflective, both of us contemplating the new reality we were returning to. The family we left before the honeymoon was not the same one we were coming back to. It was a sobering thought, but in many ways, a hopeful one. Change, though painful at times, was often the path to something better, and we were ready to face it together. My name is Sarah, and this is my story. I'm married to Tom, a kind-hearted man with a smile that could light up the darkest room. We've been married for 4 years, but it feels like we've been together for a lifetime. We met at a local coffee shop, bumped into each other by accident, and the rest, as they say, is history. But there's one part of my life that feels more like a recurring bad dream. Martha, Tom's mom. Martha is, well, she's a character. Since we got married, she's had this habit of dropping by unannounced. It was annoying at first, but now it's just part of our daily routine. She's got something to say about everything and anything I do, and it's never praise. It was just another Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen, the aroma of roasted chicken filling the air, setting the table for 3. Tom was on his way home, and Martha, of course, decided to pop in. "Chicken, Sarah? Again?" Martha walked into the kitchen, her voice dripping with disappointment. "If it were me, I'd have made pork. Tom loves my pork roast." I tried to keep my cool. "Tom likes chicken too, Martha, and it's healthier." She clicked her tongue, moving closer to inspect the salad. "Lettuce and tomatoes. How original." Just then, Tom walked in. "Something smells good," he said, wrapping his arms around me. He kissed my cheek before noticing his mother. "Mom, what a surprise." "Not a good one, apparently," Martha muttered, eyeing the chicken like it had personally offended her. Tom caught my eye, a silent plea there. "Be nice to her," it said. "She's had a tough year." I sighed, the fight draining out of me. "Dinner's ready. Let's eat." We sat down, and the usual happened. Tom talked about his day. I chimed in with stories of my own, and Martha found a way to criticize every single thing. When Tom complimented the chicken, saying it was just as good as any pork roast, I saw Martha's lips thin, but for once, she kept quiet. That night, as Tom and I cleaned up and Martha watched her favorite game show in the living room, I wondered how many more dinners like this I could take. It wasn't the chicken or the pork that was the problem. It was the constant feeling of not being good enough for the woman who mattered most to Tom. But as I looked at Tom, who was whistling while drying the dishes, I knew I'd endure it, for him. Because that's what you do for love, right? You put up with a little rain to get to the rainbow. Or in my case, a little bit of Martha to get to the rest of my life with Tom. If life were a straight road, mine had taken a turn into a lane with speed bumps named Martha. When I found out I was pregnant, Tom and I were over the moon. But joy comes with its own set of challenges. My job as an event planner was demanding, with hours as unpredictable as Martha's mood swings. So I made the tough choice to step down to a less taxing role, which unfortunately meant a smaller paycheck. It was a Sunday morning, and I was flipping pancakes, humming to myself, feeling content. Tom was reading at the table, and then, as if on cue, Martha walked in, her presence immediately changing the air. "So, Sarah, how does it feel to contribute less to the household?" Martha didn't waste any time, going straight for the jugular as she poured herself a cup of coffee. I flipped another pancake, choosing my words carefully. It feels responsible, Martha. I need to take care of myself and the baby. Babies don't need money, huh? Interesting logic, she retorted, taking a sip and making a face. This coffee is weak. Tom looked up, his brow furrowed. Mom, that's not fair. Sarah is doing what's best for our family. Martha scoffed. Oh, please. When I was pregnant, I worked until the day I gave birth, and I made sure to contribute equally. I plated the pancakes and sat down, trying to keep the peace. Times are different now, Martha, and I'm still working, just not as much. She shook her head, her disapproval as clear as the sunny day outside. You just make sure you don't get too comfortable. Money doesn't grow on trees. The conversation hung heavy over breakfast. Even the pancakes tasted like tension. Tom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. But as I watched Martha pick at her food with a sour expression, I knew this was far from over. I was bracing myself for a long road ahead, full of Martha's backhanded comments. But in my heart, I knew the peace of mind from a lesser-stressed pregnancy was worth any pay cut. And I'd do it all over again if it meant a healthier me and a healthier baby. Life has a funny way of flipping the script. Before Jamie, my home office was a place of tranquility. Now it's a circus, and I'm the juggler. Working from home while taking care of a newborn is like trying to thread a needle on a roller coaster. But it's our roller coaster, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. One Wednesday afternoon, as I was knee-deep in emails and baby burp cloths, the doorbell rang. I knew without looking. It was Martha. Just a minute, I called out, balancing Jamie on one hip and my laptop on the other. When I opened the door, there she stood, purse and judgment in hand. You look like you could use some help, she remarked, pushing past me into the living room. I followed her, settling Jamie into his bouncer. I've got it under control, Martha. It's just a busy day. She peered at my laptop screen, then at Jamie, who was trying to decide if he was hungry or sleepy. Doesn't seem like it. You know, when Tom was a baby, I made sure everything was spotless, and he was always my focus. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to defend my scattered living room. Well, times have changed, Martha. Working from home is a balancing act. She sat down, watching me like a hawk. Does Tom know how chaotic it is here? I sat across from her, trying to maintain a sense of calm. Tom understands. He knows I'm doing my best. Martha tutted, looking around with thinly veiled disapproval. I suppose your best will have to do. I wanted to tell her that my best was more than enough, that I was a good mom and a good worker. But with Jamie starting to fuss, I didn't have the energy for another round with her. As she left, Martha's parting words were, Remember, Sarah, a mother's place is with her child, not with her work. I closed the door gently, leaning against it for a moment. Her words stung, but as I picked up Jamie and he smiled, all gums and drool, I knew I was doing all right. Work can wait. These moments with Jamie cannot. And if that means my living room is a bit messy, so be it. It's our mess, and it's perfect. 4 years into our marriage, and life had settled into a rhythm, albeit one constantly interrupted by the discordant notes of my mother-in-law, Martha's visits. The first year of Jamie's life was a whirlwind of diapers, late-night lullabies, and the struggle of maintaining a career from the confines of our home. Now, as I stepped back into the professional arena, my heart ached with the separation from my little boy, but also fluttered with the excitement of reclaiming a piece of my identity. The office was just as I remembered, yet everything felt different. Colleagues welcomed me back with smiles and gentle inquiries about Jamie. My desk, once a shrine to efficiency, now also housed a colorful array of drawings and a photo of Jamie's toothless grin. Each email I sent was punctuated by thoughts of him, each project plan a reminder of the plans I had for his future. Arriving home that evening felt like crossing a finish line. I was greeted by the music of Jamie's giggles as Tom, ever the doting father, flew him around the living room like an airplane. They were in their own world, and for a moment, I was an outsider looking in. It was a pang of jealousy only a mother returning to work could understand. Before I could even kick off my shoes, the door swung open and Martha made her entrance. Sarah, back to work I see. And Jamie? She asked, her tone laced with accusation. He's been at daycare, and he's doing great, I said, trying to keep my voice light as I took Jamie into my arms. She raised an eyebrow, a silent judgment I knew all too well. Daycare? At his age? I never would have. Tom intervened. Mom, the world's different now. We're doing what's right for our family. Martha huffed, moving to the kitchen. Well, I hope you know what you're doing. The conversation hung in the air, a stalemate of generational differences. Tom and I exchanged a weary look. This was our normal, a delicate dance of defending our choices. Dinner was a quiet affair. Jamie's high chair, an island of cheer in a sea of unspoken tensions. Martha barely touched her food, her disapproval a palpable presence at the table. Afterward, as Tom put Jamie to bed, I found myself alone with Martha. Martha, I know you don't agree with our choices, but I need you to trust that we're doing what's best for Jamie, I said, clearing the plates. She looked at me, her eyes softening for just a second. Sarah, I just want what's best for him too. I know, and I appreciate that. But best can mean different things, I replied, hoping to bridge the gap between us. She nodded slowly. I suppose you're right, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. As I finished the chores and sat down to catch up on some work, the house quieted down. I mulled over the day's events, the juggle between professional and personal, the constant scrutiny from Martha. Each thought was a thread in the complex tapestry of modern motherhood. Over the next few weeks, I found my stride, balancing deadlines with daycare drop-offs, boardroom meetings with bedtime stories. I was proving to myself, more than to Martha, that I could excel at both roles. But her words lingered like a shadow, a reminder of the tightrope I walked daily. One evening, as I watched Jamie sleep, his chest rising and falling in peaceful slumber, I realized that this was my why. The long hours, the missed cuddles, they were all for this moment of tranquility, for the future we were building. And as I turned off the light, a sense of determination settled in my heart. Martha might never understand, but that was okay. This was our life, our choices, our grind. And with Tom and Jamie by my side, I was ready for all of it. When Tom and I approached Martha about watching Jamie while I worked, she accepted with a strange spark in her eye. Of course I'll watch him. A grandmother's place is with her grandchild, she had said, almost triumphantly. The first day, I left Jamie with her, armed with a list of instructions and a kiss on his forehead. If you need anything, call me, I reminded her, feeling the familiar tug at my heart as I walked out the door. Sarah, go to work. We'll be fine, Martha said, her voice tinged with the confidence that only grandmothers possess. But as the days passed, her enthusiasm began to wane. Each evening, I returned to a litany of complaints. He wouldn't nap. He's too fidgety. He throws his food, she'd report with exasperation. One evening, as I handed her a cup of tea, I ventured cautiously. Martha, if it's too much, we can look into a daycare for Jamie. She set her cup down with a clatter. No, I don't trust those places. I'll watch him. But you seem so tired, and I hate seeing you like this, I replied, concern lacing my words. Martha's eyes met mine, stubborn as ever. I said no, Sarah. I'm his grandmother. It's my job to endure. And who better to look after him than family? Her refusal was a familiar dance, one where my suggestions were met with resistance, my concerns with cold rebuttals. Okay, Martha, if that's what you want, I acquiesced, knowing that arguing was futile. Each morning, I left Jamie in her care, my heart squeezed tight with worry. Each evening, I returned to find Martha a little more worn, a little less patient, but always insistent that she would continue caring for him. Her resilience was as admirable as it was frustrating. I watched her pour her love into Jamie, even as it drained her, and I was left in a constant state of gratitude and guilt. Tom and I would talk after Jamie's bedtime, turning over options in quiet conversation, but we always circled back to Martha's steadfast refusal to let anyone else take over. Just when I thought we had settled into our new normal with Martha looking after Jamie, the unthinkable happened. I was in the middle of a work presentation when my cell phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket. Excusing myself, I stepped out to see Martha's number on the screen. Martha? I'm at work. Is everything okay? I answered, my voice tight with concern. Sarah, I can't do this today. You need to come and get Jamie. Now. Martha's voice was terse, frazzled. I felt a surge of anxiety. What's wrong? Is Jamie all right? He's fine, but I'm not. I need you to come. I can't handle this, she insisted. Panic knotted my stomach. I can't just leave work at a moment's notice, Martha. Can it wait until my lunch break? There was a pause, and then, You'll regret not coming, she said ominously, and hung up. My heart raced. I called back, no answer. I called the daycare to see if they could take Jamie last minute. They could, but I needed to drop him off. I rushed back to my presentation, my mind far from work. An hour later, as soon as I could, I hurried to my car, calling Martha again. Still no answer. Then, a call from an unknown number stopped me dead in my tracks. Mrs. Thomas? This is Officer Daniels. We have Jamie here at the police station. A woman brought him in, said she couldn't care for him anymore. My breath caught in my throat. I'll be right there. I sped to the station, thoughts whirling in chaos. Tom met me there, his face pale with worry. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas? The officer greeted us. Your son is safe. The woman, she said she was the grandmother, left him here. She claimed she was feeling unwell. Relief flooded me at the sight of Jamie in the officer's arms, unharmed. Thank you, I managed to say, taking Jamie into my embrace. Tom and I exchanged a look, the same question in our eyes. What do we do about Martha? We found her at home, sitting on the sofa, flipping through a magazine. Mom, what happened? Why did you leave Jamie at the police station? Tom's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. Martha looked up, unfazed. I told Sarah I couldn't do it. I wasn't feeling well, and I needed rest. But you left our son with the police, I exclaimed, still holding Jamie tightly. She shrugged. I knew they'd find you. I just needed some peace and quiet. Tom ran his hands through his hair, frustration etched on his face. You can't just abandon a child, Mom, especially not your grandson. Martha sighed, a theatrical display of exhaustion. Well, I told you I needed you to come, Sarah. You should have come. The implication that this was my fault stung, and I realized then that Martha's manipulations knew no bounds. This wasn't just about her being tired or ill. It was about control. As we put Jamie to bed that night, his small frame snuggled between us. The severity of Martha's actions sank in. This was a breach of trust that couldn't be mended with apologies or excuses. We had to protect our little family, and unfortunately, that meant setting boundaries with Martha. She had taken her opposition to me too far, and we couldn't risk Jamie's safety on her whims. The morning after the police station incident, our house was steeped in a heavy silence. Tom and I sat at the kitchen table, cups of coffee untouched, while Jamie played with his toys on the floor, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. We need to talk to her, Tom. What she did. I started, the anger from the night before simmering in my voice. Tom nodded, his face grim. I know. I'll call her. He dialed Martha's number, and I could hear the faint sound of a ringtone from the living room where she slept. There was a click, and then her voice. Tom, what is it? Mom, why didn't you tell us you were feeling unwell before taking Jamie to the police? Tom's voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying strain. There was a pause on the other end. I just needed to rest. I thought they would call you immediately. Martha's voice was a mix of defensiveness and weariness. But that's not the way to handle it, Mom. You scared us to death. Tom pressed on. I didn't mean to. Martha's voice cracked, and I wasn't sure if it was genuine remorse or another act. Tom sighed. We're going to see what the officers at the station say. They mentioned there was a recording. Martha was silent again, and then, Fine. Do what you need to do. The call ended, and Tom and I got ready to go to the station. We needed answers. At the station, Officer Daniels greeted us. We have the footage from when she brought Jamie in. You should see this. We braced ourselves as the officer played the video. There was Martha, looking calm and collected as she handed Jamie over to the officer. Her voice was clear, devoid of distress. "I can't do this anymore. He's the grandson." My heart sank. There was no sign of the sick, distressed grandmother she had claimed to be. "We need a copy of this," Tom said, his voice hard. Back home, Martha was pacing the living room. When we walked in, she turned to us, a question in her eyes. "We saw the footage, Martha," I said, my voice cold. "You weren't sick. You weren't in distress. You lied." Martha's face fell, and then, unexpectedly, she sat down, her shoulders slumping. I couldn't handle it. I thought I could, but—" Tom interrupted her. "You put Jamie at risk. You lied to us, to the police. How could you?" Tears streamed down Martha's face, but the theatrics didn't move us this time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But it was too late. The trust was broken. That evening, after Martha had packed her things and left, Tom, Jamie, and I sat in the living room, a tight little circle. We didn't say much, but we didn't need to. We had each other, and we would move forward, together. The truth had been painful, but it had also set us free. It had only been a few days since Martha had left when she unexpectedly reappeared at our doorstep. As if the incident had never occurred, she stood there with a smile, offering to watch Jamie. "Martha, what are you doing here?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I've come to help with Jamie, like before. You obviously need the help," she said, brushing past me into the house. I was dumbfounded. "Martha, after what happened, you think we can just go back to how things were?" She turned to me with a defiant look. "Well, it wouldn't have happened if you had come when I called," she retorted, her words sharp like daggers. Before I could respond, Tom walked in, his face darkening at the sight of his mother. "What are you saying, Mom? That this was Sarah's fault?" Martha's eyes didn't waver. If she had been a stay-at-home mother like she should be, none of this would have happened. That's when Tom exploded, the anger and frustration that had been simmering for days finally boiling over. "How dare you? You do this out of spite for Sarah, and you put Jamie in danger because of it." Martha recoiled as if slapped, her facade crumbling. "Tom, No, Mom, I don't want to hear it. You've crossed a line. You deliberately ignored Sarah. You neglected your grandson, and for what? To prove a point?" His voice was a crescendo of outrage. She tried to interrupt, to defend herself, but Tom wouldn't have it. "I can't trust you anymore, Mom. I don't want you here. I don't want to talk to you until you realize the gravity of what you've done." Martha looked between us, the realization dawning that she had indeed gone too far. Without another word, she turned and left, the finality of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Tom turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and resolve. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have seen it sooner. But I promise you, Jamie's safety comes first. We come first." I nodded, the solidarity between us more potent than ever. "I know, Tom. We'll get through this, just like we always do. Together." We knew the road ahead would be without Martha, at least for the foreseeable future. It was a painful but necessary decision, a line drawn to protect our son, our family, our peace.